In our relationships, whether romantic, with friends, or within family, we often encounter emotional triggers. These triggers might be caused by a misunderstanding, a critical comment, or an action that makes us feel hurt or frustrated. It's natural to want to react in these moments, but impulsive reactions often lead to more conflict and hurt feelings. How can we respond with calm and rationality instead of allowing emotions to take control? Marcus Aurelius offers a profound Stoic insight. When someone does wrong, it is because they believe it right. This thought teaches us that when others hurt or offend us, their actions come from their own perspective or belief. Stoicism encourages us to recognize that emotional triggers are often based on misunderstandings or differing views, and instead of reacting impulsively, we can respond calmly and with compassion. In this video, we'll explore how Stoic principles can help us manage emotional triggers in relationships, allowing us to respond with clarity and empathy. In our relationships, whether romantic, with friends, or within family, we often encounter emotional triggers. These triggers might be caused by a misunderstanding, a critical comment, or an action that makes us feel hurt or frustrated. It's natural to want to react in these moments, but impulsive reactions often lead to more conflict and hurt feelings. How can we respond with calm and rationality instead of allowing emotions to take control? Marcus Aurelius offers a profound Stoic insight. When someone does wrong, it is because they believe it right. This thought teaches us that when others hurt or offend us, their actions come from their own perspective or belief. Stoicism encourages us to recognize that emotional triggers are often based on misunderstandings or differing views, and instead of reacting impulsively, we can respond calmly and with compassion. In this video, we'll explore how Stoic principles can help us manage emotional triggers in relationships, allowing us to respond with clarity and empathy. Marcus Aurelius's thought: when someone does wrong, it is because they believe it right, offers a powerful perspective on managing emotional triggers in relationships. When we feel hurt, angry, or frustrated by someone's actions, it's easy to assume that they are acting out of malice or indifference. However, Marcus Aurelius reminds us that people act based on their beliefs and perceptions of what is right or justified. Their wrongs often stem from their own understanding of the situation and not necessarily from an intention to hurt us. This Stoic insight helps us shift from reacting impulsively to responding with understanding and calm. Instead of immediately assuming that someone's actions are wrong or unjust, Stoicism teaches us to take a step back. Recognize that everyone's actions are shaped by their own experiences and views, and choose a response that reflects our virtue and emotional maturity. This allows us to engage in relationships with empathy and clarity, avoiding knee-jerk reactions that could escalate the situation. The challenge of emotional triggers in relationships, whether romantic, with family, or friends. Emotional triggers are inevitable. A criticism from a partner, a miscommunication with a friend, or a comment from a family member can bring up strong emotions. Triggers are moments when we feel emotionally charged, and in these moments, our instinct is often to react immediately. However, reacting impulsively often leads to more hurt and misunderstanding, while taking a Stoic approach can help us respond with calm, empathy, and clarity. Stoicism teaches us that we don't have to let external events, including other people's words or actions, control our emotional state. Instead, we have the power to choose how we respond, regulate our emotions, and approach each situation with rationality and virtue. Stoic practices for managing emotional triggers in relationships: pause and reflect before reacting. The first Stoic practice for managing emotional triggers is to pause before responding. When we feel triggered, whether by criticism or a misunderstanding, we often feel an urge to react immediately. But this impulsive reaction can lead to escalation and regret. Instead, Stoicism teaches us to pause and take a moment to reflect on our emotions. What are we feeling? Why are we feeling this way? This brief pause gives us the space to respond thoughtfully, not impulsively. Understand the other person's perspective. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that others act according to their own beliefs and perspectives. Understanding where the other person is coming from can help us manage our emotions and reduce conflict. When we recognize that their actions may be driven by their own views or misunderstandings, it becomes easier to respond with empathy rather than defensiveness. By stepping into their shoes, we can approach the situation with a clearer perspective and a calm demeanor. Reframe the situation with Stoic logic. Stoicism encourages us to view challenges as opportunities for growth. Instead of seeing a disagreement or criticism as a personal attack, we can choose to reframe it as a chance to practice patience, self-control, and virtue. Every emotional trigger is an opportunity to exercise our resilience and emotional maturity. When we approach these situations with a growth mindset, we can handle them more gracefully and avoid getting caught up in emotional reactivity. Focus on what you can control. One of the most important Stoic practices is the dichotomy of control, the understanding that we cannot control how others act or what they say, but we can control our response. When we're triggered by someone's words or actions, we often feel a strong urge to change their behavior or make them see things our way. However, Stoicism teaches us that the only thing we can control is how we choose to respond. By focusing on our own actions and maintaining emotional self-regulation, we avoid being controlled by external events. Respond with virtue. In the face of emotional triggers, Stoicism calls us to respond with virtue. Whether it's patience, kindness, forgiveness, or wisdom, we can choose to react in a way that reflects our highest values. This does not mean suppressing our emotions or accepting poor behavior from others, but rather responding with integrity and grace. Stoicism teaches us that virtue is the true measure of success, and by responding to challenges with virtue, we strengthen our character and maintain inner peace. The freedom of emotional resilience, the true freedom that Stoicism offers, is the freedom from being controlled by external triggers. When we practice pause, self-reflection, and empathy, we create the space to respond with calm, rationality, and virtue, regardless of the situation. Emotional resilience is built when we no longer allow external events or others' behavior to dictate our emotional state. By following the Stoic path, we learn to detach from emotional triggers, responding with clarity and grace rather than reacting impulsively. In doing so, we build stronger, more resilient relationships and create a life that reflects our highest values. In every relationship, whether romantic, with family, or friends, we will encounter emotional triggers. These triggers often come in the form of criticism, misunderstandings, or actions from others that stir up anger, hurt, or frustration. It's easy to respond impulsively in these moments, but impulsive reactions often lead to more conflict and emotional exhaustion. How can we better manage our reactions and respond with calm and rationality, rather than being controlled by our emotions? Marcus Aurelius offers a profound Stoic teaching. When someone does wrong, it is because they believe it right. This insight challenges us to look beyond initial emotional reactions and consider the perspective of the other person. When someone offends us or acts in a way we find hurtful, it's often because their actions are shaped by their own beliefs, perspectives, and experiences. Instead of reacting out of anger or hurt, Stoicism encourages us to recognize that others act based on their own understanding of the world. This allows us to respond with empathy and calm, rather than being swept up by emotional impulses. The challenge of emotional triggers in our relationships. Emotional triggers often rise from misunderstandings, communication breakdowns, or simply from the different beliefs and values of those we interact with. When someone criticizes us or says something hurtful, our instinct is often to react emotionally, perhaps with defensiveness, anger, or hurt. This emotional reaction can escalate the situation, leading to further misunderstanding or conflict. Stoicism teaches us that we cannot control the actions or opinions of others, but we can control how we respond. The key to managing emotional triggers is to develop a self-awareness and emotional regulation necessary to respond thoughtfully, rather than impulsively. By practicing calm reflection and recognizing that others' actions come from their own perspectives, we are able to avoid letting our emotions control our behavior. Stoic practices for managing emotional triggers in relationships: pause and reflect before reacting. One of the key Stoic practices is the ability to pause before reacting. When triggered, whether by a hurtful comment, criticism, or a disagreement, we often feel the urge to react immediately. However, this impulsive reaction can lead to more misunderstanding and conflict. Instead, Stoicism teaches us to pause, take a deep breath, and reflect on what we are feeling. What triggered us? Why are we feeling this way? This brief moment of reflection helps us respond more rationally, with clarity, and with a focused mind. Understand the other person's perspective in Stoicism. Empathy and understanding are key practices. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that people act according to their beliefs. When someone offends us, instead of immediately reacting with anger or frustration, Stoicism encourages us to understand their perspective. By remembering that others' actions are driven by their own values and perceptions, we can respond with compassion rather than defensiveness, reframe criticism as an opportunity for growth. One of the most powerful Stoic tools for managing emotional triggers is reframing. Instead of viewing criticism as a personal attack, we can choose to view it as an opportunity for a self-reflection and growth. When we are criticized, Stoicism encourages us to ask, what can I learn from this? How can I improve? By reframing criticism as feedback instead of a judgment of our character, we can respond with maturity and self-awareness. Focus on what you can control. Essential Stoic practice is the dichotomy of control, the understanding that we can control how others act, but we can control how we respond to them. Criticism or misunderstandings may trigger emotional reactions, but we can't control the other person's behavior. What we can control is how we respond. Stoicism teaches us that the power lies in our reactions. By focusing on our responses and choosing how we react, we regain control over our emotional state and avoid being swept up by external triggers. Practice emotional detachment. Emotional detachment doesn't mean suppressing emotions, but rather not allowing our emotions to dictate our actions. Stoicism teaches us to observe our feelings without being ruled by them. When triggered, we can take a moment to acknowledge the emotions we are feeling, but then detach from them, choosing to act with reason, wisdom, and calm. By practicing detachment, we avoid the impulsive, reactive behavior that can cause conflict and instead respond in a way that is aligned with our values. The freedom of emotional mastery, the true freedom Stoicism offers, is the ability to respond thoughtfully in the face of emotional triggers, rather than reacting impulsively. By practicing self-awareness, empathy, and emotional regulation, we can manage our emotions in relationships and engage with others in a calm, rational way. Stoicism teaches us that emotional resilience comes not from avoiding emotions, but from mastering them, allowing us to navigate life's challenges with clarity, peace, and virtue. By detaching from impulsive reactions and responding with understanding, rationality, and compassion, we create healthier, more harmonious relationships that are based on emotional maturity and mutual respect. As we conclude today's reflection on managing emotional triggers in relationships, Remember that true emotional resilience comes from our ability to respond calmly and rationally, rather than reacting impulsively. Marcus Aurelius teaches us that when someone does wrong, it is because they believe it right. This Stoic insight allows us to recognize that others' actions come from their own perspective, and it gives us the space to respond with empathy and understanding. Stoicism teaches us that our emotional state does not need to be governed by external events or people's actions. Instead, we can choose to respond with virtue, self-awareness, and calm, regardless of the circumstances. By practicing emotional detachment, self-reflection, and empathy, we can build stronger relationships and face life's emotional challenges with clarity and peace. So, the next time you feel emotionally triggered in a relationship, remember that you have the power to choose your response. By taking a moment to pause, reflect, and approach the situation with understanding, you can create a more harmonious and empowered way of engaging with others. Thank you for joining us today. If this video resonated with you, subscribe and share it with someone who might benefit from learning how to manage emotional triggers and respond with calm and rationality. Together, let's walk the Stoic path of emotional resilience, self-mastery, and meaningful relationships.